Growing up, we always watched athletes on TV. They're the ones that were highlighted, and they always had the cameras on them. We know the journeys they took to get to where they are at. But what about the broadcasters? The ones who give you daily insight on the world of sports, and the ones who give you play-by-play of your favorite sports games. Their journey may not be as difficult, but it certainly has its obstacles. 800 sports broadcasters will be hired before 2022, and from 2016 to 2026, the number of broadcasting jobs will fall 9%. So how do broadcasters make it in a now more competitive industry? In this documentary, you will learn about the journey that these sports broadcasters went on to getting where they are at today and their experiences in the industry now. What made you decide that you wanted to be a sports broadcaster or something in that field?
Well, growing up, sports was always such a huge part of my life. I played soccer, basketball, volleyball, all throughout my life. And I always enjoyed watching TV, and I always knew that I wanted to be involved in sports for my career because it's just something I was just so interested in. So that's really where I picked it up from. And then, I love talking to people. I love meeting new people. I love discovering stories. So I just kind of put the two and two together and just figured sports broadcasting was the right move for me.
Well, I knew from a very young age. I used to go to work with my dad when I was a little kid in Cleveland. He's a sports broadcaster. Right now he broadcasts the Red Sox game. But when I was younger, I think he took me to my first game at 6 weeks. And then I started going to the TV station with him in Cleveland when he was a sports anchor reporter. And he would go to the Cavs games when he was broadcasting the Cavaliers, and he would go to the Indians games, and I would go everywhere. So, and then when he went to Fenway to broadcast games, I would always go with him. We go on road trips. So I knew from a very young age that's what I wanted to do.
And I thought, all you do is go to these things and then talk about them. That sounds great. And then as I got older, I even was more committed to it as a profession because I really did like sports and I like to write. And I said, okay, so I can be a sports writer. You can just put the two things together. So that's really how I got interested in it.
And so I had gone into college knowing I always wanted to be a broadcaster, a television journalist. But I didn't think about sports until I was watching a Packers game one day, and my friend said to me, "You know so much about sports. You should be a sports reporter. They let girls do that now." And so I went and I got an internship that summer in the sports department at the ABC affiliate in Milwaukee, near where I was going to school at Marquette University, and I just fell in love with it.
Yeah, so I thought it just would be a good transition, given that, I played and, get an opportunity to take audience inside of what actually happens for us, get into the psychology of things, and, being part of the 1% to 3% of people walking this earth that had the privilege of playing D1 or professional sports. It's a great way to give a unique perspective to the general population.
Who was a broadcaster or broadcasters that you looked up to growing up and that inspired you to be a broadcaster?
Jackie McMullen was probably my role model growing up, watching her on ESPN. I actually got to meet her one time at a Celtics game, so that was amazing. Doris Burke, she's also someone who I look up to. Being a woman in sports, having those role models up there, that's something I really like to look forward to.
I had a chance to watch Sean McDonough growing up as a kid, and I had a chance to work with him on college football and Major League Baseball when I was at ESPN. He might be the best, that I've been around. Obviously, my dad, who I'm biased, but I think he's the best.
So when I was younger, I loved Jane Pauley. I always wanted to be the next Jane Pauley. She was one of the first females to ever be on the Today Show and a co-host. She was one of the youngest, and she just had this demeanor about her that I loved watching her in the morning.
Was there a moment in your career where you really messed up on air?
Yeah, I could probably name a lot of times where I messed up. That's gonna happen. It happens to everyone. It happens to professionals. I was broadcasting one time and I was introducing myself and my color announcer, and I said his completely wrong name, and we just laughed about it. It's just stuff like that.
Yes, there was. It was my first live shot at WCBS and Channel 2 in New York. I was 27 or 28, and I said a word that I wish I didn't say. And yes, I remember it vividly, and I thought my career was over at the time, and it was totally an accident, but I was so nervous. Yeah, there's I misspoke, and just because out of nerves. I was a younger guy, and yeah, that's one I'll never forget.
But I have one of those moments now. I was at Gillette Stadium, and I've been in hurricanes and blizzards and all the rest of that stuff. I think this was as bad a wind and rainstorm as I have ever been standing in, and the cold, wet, windy weather froze my phone. Mm-hmm. And so I had no way of knowing the notes, and so normally you can sort of like fake your way through that a little bit, but it threw me more than normal, and there was like I don't know if it was a 10-second pause, but it might have been a 5-second pause, where I tried to remember what I was going to say next.
And the NHL was on the verge of a holdout, and they ended up holding out for the entire year in the mid-2000s, early aughts. And I asked Charles Barkley about the NBA holdout, and he was like, well, we solved that issue about a week ago. And he was really gracious about it, but it was a press conference setting. I was mortified. I mean, to this day, I sometimes have nightmares about like asking that question, but it was a good lesson because I wasn't prepared.
If you've ever gotten rejected or fired from a broadcasting job, what should you do to keep standing out and to get more jobs in the field?
College, I would try and get, internships and stuff like that. People, look for experiences when you're trying to first get into the field. That's hard to do. So there was definitely rejections, but I think I found a good fit with the news channel.
And I mean, I had like a stack of rejection letters. And the crazy thing was I had a ton of experience. Like I worked for a television station in Milwaukee from the time I was a sophomore in college through after graduation until I got my first job on air. So I had experience producing, writing, running teleprompter, editing. Like I knew how to do everything except for be on air. And I just couldn't get a job. And I finally did. I just stuck with it. And I finally kind of begged for my first job. I said, I'll take a pay cut. It's okay. I just want to learn how to be a reporter. And I did. I got it.
And I tell people this all the time that want to get into the field. You're going to get a lot of people that say no. You're going to apply for a lot of jobs. I tell younger people that you just got to keep plugging away. It only takes one person to say, okay, we're going to hire you, which you don't think about at the time. You just, oh my goodness, I didn't get another job.
So really, what did you do to stand out to get your first broadcasting job?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It does kind of require me to brag or to say something nice about myself, because I do think it's true that every sportscaster needs to stand out. They don't have to be outstanding, but they need to stand out in some way, because whether or not, one guy, like you can describe your favorite sportscasters and their characteristics. What do you like about, John Anderson, or what do you like about Jim Nantz or Bob Costas or something like that? And so for me, what always stood out was my writing.
At a time where like sports departments, that was like the in thing to do, right? So, but I still had to beg for my first job and got it. I think now what I do to stand out is honestly just be myself. And the hardest thing about doing that is in an industry like broadcasting, everybody wants you to be who they think you should be, right? So they want to put you into this box so that they feel comfortable with you, especially I think when you're a woman. And I have just over time learned to say, if you don't like me and you don't like my style, that's okay. There's other people who do.
Well, first, everybody looks at your tape, what you put on tape. What did I do to stand out? I think what you do is your resume is basically on a tape. You have a paper resume, and then you put your tape together, and you try to put your best material at the top of the tape. And you hope somebody likes you. It's a very subjective field. So I always tell younger people to put, when they compile their resume tape, what we call resume tape or resume reel, and you can see those on YouTube, they're all over, is that you put your best material at the front in a montage, and you hope that stands out.
You know, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses when it comes to what you want to do. So I really just focused in on what I thought my strengths were and what I could bring to the job and what else I could create for the job, not just focusing on, what they had laid out, but how I could improve it from what I had learned. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Places are always looking for you to, expand instead of just fit in.
What is unique about broadcasting for a local channel as opposed to a national channel?
I think it's the fact, obviously things are different right now for COVID-19, but if it was just a regular, people allowed in the gym, stuff like that, like I'd be walking in with like my equipment and, parents would look at me and they would wave and they'd be like, "Hey, Kristen, how are you? Like, when's the game gonna air?" Stuff like that. So like just, walking around in the sports atmosphere and just having people, know who you are, because on a local aspect, they, listen to you. I think that's really cool.
I think you're more emotionally invested in stories because the town is more emotionally invested. So when I worked in Milwaukee or Pittsburgh or now Boston, like that, those are 3, depending on where you live, 3 if you're in Milwaukee or Pittsburgh, 4, 5 if you count the Revs if you're in Boston. Those teams are teams that people grew up watching. They have memories tied to that. They care about history. They're passionate about it. Whereas when I worked at MLB Network, there's still that passion within each, subsection you go to, but your overall job is to look at everything at a macro level, right?
Yeah, I started local. I started at a local TV station in Brockton, and then I went down to Cape 11 TV, which had a newscast on the Cape. And I think that's a great place to start for any young person. If you can start at your local, Needham channel, which a lot of times I'll flip through and the Needham channel's on here. They're broadcasting football games or soccer games. I would highly recommend that too.
Locally, we're Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics, Patriots, and now the New England Revolution. And if a story is big enough, we'll slip that in and we'll talk about LeBron James making this comment or doing that thing. And we'll continue to follow Tom Brady because there's still some local interest in what he's doing. But no, it's much easier. I hate to admit that or acknowledge it, but it's much easier to work in local sports because while it's helpful to know everything about the Tampa Bay Rays, Toronto Blue Jays, Yankees, Orioles, I don't have to know everything about them.
Was there a specific person you interviewed that you had a really good experience with, and then was there someone where you had a really bad experience with?
Well, I've been fortunate. I loved all my interviews. I haven't done a lot of them, probably like 15, 20, but I guess the trick that I kind of did was I wanted to make sure my first seasons of interviews were all people that were attached to my own personal journey. So when, 10, 15 years from now, when I'm still broadcasting and I'm on season 8, 9, or I'm doing something else, I can always look fondly back on the first season and have like a personal connection to it.
They're always so like open and willing to talk to me, which I think is a great thing to have. One of my favorite things that I've done so far in the Needham channel is when the girls volleyball team won the state championship back in 2019, getting those post-game interviews of those athletes, getting their reactions up close and personal. It was really fun. And we do this segment called Rockets Report on the Needham channel where, we dive deep into specific stories that we think are interesting. We like to bring to light. So, we did a story with the volleyball team where I actually played volleyball with them. And while we were asking them questions, having, fun experiences like that where it's not always just a one-on-one, straight interview, like you're actually being involved with what they're doing. I love doing that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I think my not so great experience is probably well documented. Randy Johnson, all interviews can't be great. I've had way more positive ones than negative ones, but, if you do it long enough and you do it every day, there'll be some negative ones, but most of them are positive. Like I would say 99%, are positive. So,
I always felt like Teddy Bruschi didn't like me. He would always be very curt with his answers to me and dismissive or something like that. I do remember, and this is, I don't think it's inappropriate because it was a public story, but there was a period of time in the 90s when the Patriots were in a lot of trouble for an episode that occurred in their locker room with a female reporter. And they ended up going 1-15 that year because they were a bad team and they were also distracted by this controversy. And the next year, I talked to defensive end Garen Veris, and I said, during last season, you guys all said that what was going on was not a distraction. But looking back on it now, do you kind of think that it was? And then he smacked my microphone out of my hand. Didn't knock it out of my hand, but hit the microphone and said, "I'm not answering that question." I was like, "Ooh," so that was intimidating and scary. Those were a couple of the more negative experiences, even though they were kind of fun. And the more positive ones, it's interesting to me that when you're in the business and you're just working, you don't have time to stargaze.
If there are any, are there any cons to being a sports broadcaster?
There are like 10 coveted days that people would like to have off in a given year. You had Christmas and New Year's, or 4th of July, Mother's Day, Father's Day, those types of things. If there are 10 days you'd like to have off. In the first 12 years I was here at Channel 5, that would be 120 of those days. I worked 119 of them.
I think about the number of times, like the perfect example is my younger sister got married in 2008. And I was the Brewers reporter that year. And she had a shower, a bachelorette party, and a wedding. And they were on 3 different days. And I said, you have to pick 2. I said, I can't go to all 3. Like, I'm sorry, I know I'm your maid of honor. I'm your oldest sister, only sister. I said, but I can't. I said, so I can't miss that many series. I can't miss that many games. That's hard. I've missed a lot of friends' weddings. I ended up going to her bachelorette party and her wedding, by the way.
But there aren't that many people in television who are working 9 to 5. There's a lot more people who are working 3:30 to 11:30 or midnight that are working 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. or something like that. And you do have to work every holiday. To me, that's the negative of the business.
I don't know if there's necessarily anything I don't like. I mean, it's just it's a local TV station, so your audience is mostly, local residents.
Oh, I look forward to going to work all the time. I really do. I work with great people. We have a great sports office. We have a great newsroom. No, wish I could find a downside for you. There isn't. No, it's fun. I mean, this is kind of like my dream, and this is what I knew and I want to do. And right now, I'm talking to you and I'm watching 2 games, so it's fun.
Do you feel satisfied with the broadcasting job you have now, or would you like to get a better position in the channel you're in, or a better position in another channel?
That's great. Yeah, of course. It's just a perpetual thing. It's the short answer, no, I'm not satisfied. It's just beginning, just getting started in a lot of different ways and just learning a lot. And so, I'm just excited what lies ahead. And also I'm excited to continue to have other people attached and align themselves along the journey, and so we could get there together quicker and make the whole experience more enjoyable.
I don't know if I want to use the word, satisfied, because I never want to be satisfied with myself. I always want to be moving forward, improving myself, my skills. I think the Needham channel is a great place to do that. They give me all the resources that I need and support that I need and all that stuff to, improve my craft and what I do. I'm only in my second year at the Needham Channel, and I don't see myself going anywhere soon, but I'd like to, expand my network and all that stuff. Yeah, of course. I think everyone who's starting out of college would love to do that. But as for now, I think this is a great place for me to be.
Happy where I am now. It's, this is a very challenging job. And the fact that, you're covering the local teams, and Boston is such a passionate sports market. So, no, you always want to get better at any job you do. And I don't like to use the word content, but yeah, this is exactly where I want to be. I mean, this is fun. This is fun here.
So actually, I'm pretty happy with what I do. And I wasn't always. I think when I came here in 2012, I saw it as like a step back to the network. Like, okay, I'll work in Boston. It's sort of like a jumping off point for ESPN or something. But as I got here and my role evolved, it got to a point where I didn't want to go. And I've had conversations, and my agent has had conversations with like NFL Network and ESPN, but they're always for jobs that to me wouldn't be fulfilling.
No, I would say that Channel 5 might get the delineation as a destination place, and you get to cover the teams that you like, and you get familiar. So no, when I got here in 2003, I have not looked for another job since, and I'm closer to the end than the beginning. So I think I'm going to finish up here.
What has been your favorite part of being a sports broadcaster?
I work with high school teams, so it's not like your typical sports producer job you would think at, ESPN or something like that. I get close up and real, connections with these student athletes and these coaches and athletic directors. So I think, having that as a part of my job, having that personal connection and relationship with them really improves like your broadcast, because you get to talk about so many other things along with the sports. So I think that.
Besides getting to go to games pretty much always for free, like I hate paying for tickets now. I love, and it's so cheesy, but like I love the connections you make with lots of different people. Like if I did something else in life, I wouldn't be able to come talk. Like not many other people get asked to come to a high school class, right? And talk to people. I like that you get to meet people from all different walks of life.
Well, I think my favorite moment is coming back home and being here at Channel 5, the station I grew up watching. I came back and I started doing news. So, you envision where you want to be in life when you're younger. It's probably, my favorite moment now. My favorite moment, just every day. Every day it's fun.
It is I really do enjoy writing, and I have a good time doing the research that is required to be a good writer.
The amount of people who have interest of coming on a show, and I like a wide variety of people. So far, being able to interview like CEOs of companies, U.S. former district attorneys, but also like with Troy Bell and Coach Al Skinner, being able to answer questions, unanswered questions from decades ago, and then now you get the answer, and now that you're older and you have a better understanding, everything makes sense. In the end, it all makes sense.
What has also really been your brightest moment as a sports broadcaster?
So being at the Needham Channel is my first, real job in the field that I wanted. So I think that's just a great accomplishment in yourself. It's hard to get a job in your field when you first start, and the Needham Channel has given me so many opportunities. But I think, being promoted to a sports producer is something that I've always wanted to do, and the fact that I'm doing it, and I'm only 23 years old, I think that's a pretty good accomplishment.
Every day you learn. It's a do-it-yourself situation, especially when you're starting off. Gotta plan, gotta prepare, you gotta practice. And so that's one of the transferable skills you learn as a player and now broadcasting. But just the learning part, and just kind of the confirmation, like, yeah, you know what, I belong here.
I worked 2 years at ESPN as a sideline reporter, freelance, doing Major League Baseball. and college football. I worked from 2000 to 2017 in New York, so I got to do a lot of fun things. I covered how many? 5 Super Bowls?
There's a few that stand out. I think the Super Bowl weeks are really outstanding. Coming to Boston and following the Patriots too. I haven't been to all 6 of their Super Bowls. I've been to, I think, 4. And it's an entire week of energy and a buzz and excitement and hard work.
The journey all these broadcasters took were very different. But what I've learned is that in this business and throughout this journey, you're going to have good experiences and you're going to have bad experiences. And it may take a very long time to get where you want to get. But in the end, sports broadcasting is one of the most rewarding jobs in the world.